Tonight, the AWB scandal hots up with the head of Alia, that mysterious Jordanian transport operation, speaking on television for the first time to our Tom Cooks.
We are dealing with the Australian government.
And the man who calls himself America's worst nightmare. Evo Morales has gone from a humble coca leaf farmer to Bolivia's first indigenous leader. And he's an unabashed lefty.
Entonces, si desde la casa van que vienen acusaciones, es que hay miedo.
G'day, welcome to another classically global edition of Dateline. Bolivia, Jordan, in a tick, the latest from the Solomons following today's dramatic backdown by Prime Minister-elect Rini. Before that, though, for what seems like an eternity, John Howard and his ministers have been denying any prior knowledge of the $295 million in AWB kickbacks to Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq. Earlier this month, with that local political backdrop, Dateline's Tom Cooks travelled to Amman, the Jordanian capital. There, Tom successfully tracked down the head of the controversial trucking company, Alia, through which the kickbacks were paid. In his interview with Othman Al-Absi, the first ever on television, as distinct from the telephone, Tom was told that while the Australian government maintains its mantra of ignorance about any nefarious activities by AWB, according to Mr Al-Absi, Alia's had a long-term relationship with Australia's trade representative in Jordan. Here's Tom with this latest twist in the ongoing AWB scandal.
Well, Prime Minister, what did you make of your appearance before the polling place? Nice to see you all. Hello there. More believable next time you pretend.
It's been 23 years since a serving Prime Minister has been called before a Royal Commission to explain himself. Not only John Howard, but his Foreign Affairs and Trade Ministers were all required to tell the Cole inquiry exactly what they knew about the $295 million paid in kickbacks by the AWB to the Iraqi government of Saddam Hussein.
I did not know, my ministers did not know, and on the information that I have been provided and the advice I have received from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, I do not believe that the department knew that AWB was involved in the payment of bribes.
Tonight, a key player in the scandal tells Dateline that he'd been meeting with the Australian government trade representative in Jordan since the mid-90s. His company, Alia, was a money launderer for the AWB, allowing it to funnel hundreds of millions in illegal payments in breach of the United Nations sanctions.
Do you believe that the Australian ambassador and the Australian embassy in Jordan, that they knew what you were, the relationship with AWB? They understood
yes, because the Ostred, there is a company name here, it's Ostred, belong to the embassy. They know about us and...
right from the beginning, the relationship?
Yes, and there is a guy, Ayyash, Ayman Ayyash, or I don't remember the first name. He sit with us, he came to our office here, and we sit in some restaurants in Amman with the AWB. It was a dinner or something. So they know about us, and we know this guy from the Ostred.
And this is right from the beginning of the relationship? This is when you were first setting it up, or this is some later time? Or?
Yeah, it was since 1995, 96, something like that.
Ayman Ayyash was the Austrade representative in Jordan from 1994 to 2003. Austrade is the trade agency of the Australian government.
And for that reason you felt that you were essentially dealing with the Australian government?
Yeah, we are dealing with the Australian government, and everything is official and everything is in a right way, let's say. That's what happened.
According to Mr Al-Absi, this is not the first time that he's told of his early links with Austrade. In February this year, he was interviewed by an Australian government solicitor.
What did the Australian government want to know? What did they want to talk to you about?
About the same issue, about the relation between AWB and our company, and about the transferring that money, and lots of questions. And we give them a statement about all the questions they need.
Mr Al-Absi told Dateline that he had informed the government solicitor about his meetings with the Austrade representative, Mr Ayman Ayyash. But none of this made it into this statement tendered to the Cole Royal Commission. So what else can Alia Transportation, the mysterious Jordanian conduit in this scandal, tell us? When Dateline interviewed Mr Al-Absi, there was a reminder of the strong ties between his company and the AWB.
It's a Christmas card from AWB, isn't it?
Oh, you know.
Give us some scarf from. Is it a Christmas card or is it?
This is for our Eid, I think. Washing season greeting.
It's a Christmas card
for the New Year.
From AWB.
Alia also has very strong ties to the Iraqi government, which owns 49% of the company.
Right from the beginning, was the company a joint venture with the Iraqi government?
Yeah, that's right, because it was a joint venture between Ministry of Transport of Iraq and our Sheikh Hussein Khawam, because in that time there is embargo and it's very difficult, the communication. They need some people from outside Iraq to work in transportation and especially in maritime. So this is the idea came of.
And it was well known, from what I understand, right from the beginning, that it was a joint venture with the Iraqi government. There was no secret about that at all.
It's not secret. It's written in Ministry, registered in Ministry of Trade in Jordan, and there is nothing to hide.
Alia has also emerged as one of the major front companies used by the Iraqi government to rort the All for Food program, set up when trade sanctions were imposed after the First Gulf War. And according to the United Nations investigation, between March 2000 and December 2003, around $1 billion flowed into accounts held by Alia at this branch of the National Bank of Jordan. Nearly $300 million of this were illegal payments from AWB, disguised as either after-sales fees or as bogus transport services that were never supplied. After taking a cut of between 1/4 and 1%, Alia transferred the money to an Iraqi government account at the Al Rafidain Bank in Amman. Othman Al-Absi doesn't dispute this money flow.
As agent for AWB, I will receive that money, and officially through our bank in Jordan, and also this money officially to Al Rafidain Bank, transfer it in Amman, Jordan, in account of Water Transportation Company of Iraq. It's not to any personal account. It's for a government account.
So you're not concerned with what those fees were for? I'm
concerned that this is a fees, but fees for what? For whom? All what I know, it's for government of Iraq. That's what we know. And in that time, everything, because there are more than 200-300 companies, they have a contract with Ministry of Trade, with Ministry of Transportation, with any ministers in Iraq, and they do the same procedure. So nothing to hide in that time. So where was the United Nations in that time? Why nobody said what you are doing or what's that? Because as what I told you, it was official.
According to Mr Al-Absi, his company was on the guest list to the Australian Embassy in Amman.
The embassy here in Jordan, they know us and they invite us as a famous company in Jordan. And they invite our chairman to the home of ambassador around 2 times. And they know about all our activities and our working. So we don't feel that it must be through official channel, because all what we heard in that time, AWB also, it's a part of the government.
So did you think that you were dealing with the government in one sense, with the Australian government?
That's what we felt, because you know, when any government give the license to export the wheat to just one company, that means there is a relation between the government of Australia and this company.
When Sheikh Al-Khawam met with the Australian ambassador, do you know what they spoke about?
Actually, it was a meeting about to encourage the trading between Iraqi and famous guys with Australia. It's like a trading, you know. It was a conference meeting in that time. The second time it was just dinner meeting and general talking.
And that was, when was that meeting?
Last year, 2 meetings last year. What I would like to say, when the embassy of Australia invite our company or the chairman That's mean because he's a famous and he's well known in Iraq, and he do a good business, and that's why they invite him to make a good relation between Iraq and Australia.
Some other Jordanian businessmen that I've spoken to have said that it was well known that the Iraqi government imposed a 10% charge on top of everything that was going into Iraq. This was not hidden. Everybody knew.
It was not hidden. Everything was clear for anybody. So on that time, we didn't interfere in this or that, but my personal talking, any amount they were asking, we thought that it's through MOU, through the United Nations.
Dr. Labib Kemhawi is the managing director of CESCO, a Jordanian company supplying the oil and gas industries. His company was also identified by the UN inquiry as having made illegal payments to the Iraqi government in breach of sanctions. He claims these taxes were an unavoidable cost of doing business with Iraq.
But I'm talking about the tax itself. I mean, and the tax itself was not a secret, no? If it was a secret, it was the worst kept secret on earth.
So you believe that the extra charges that Iraq was imposing were totally out in the open. Everybody knew about this. There should be no surprise about this.
It was mandatory on everybody, and it was not a secret. And it was a tax. Okay? Which every contract had to pay. And the money went to the Iraqi government. This is not the responsibility of the business community. It is the responsibility of the United Nations to make sure that its regulations were observed, that its sanctions were observed. It was not.
According to Dr. Kemhawi, Jordan had to break the sanctions regime simply to survive.
We cannot afford this luxury in Jordan. You have to understand this. If we do what we are told to do, we die. We cannot afford it.
What do you mean if you do what you were told to do?
For example, don't do this, don't do that, don't export, don't. I mean, it's not really a luxury. If we don't sell to Iraq, then we sell to somebody else.
There is no other choice.
Absolutely.
Mr. Kemhawi's company, CESCO, is just one of the more than 2,000 identified by the United Nations inquiry as having made illegal payments to the Iraqi government. The list is a who's who of international business. But the granddaddy of them all, accounting for 14% of all the kickbacks paid by suppliers to Iraq, was the AWB. In 2004, when the United Nations announced its inquiry into the Oil for Food program, Alexander Downer wrote to the AWB to offer his support and to
congratulate AWB Limited in its impressive performance in securing exports to Iraq. This reflects the close cooperation between AWB Limited and the government. The government remains committed to working closely with AWB Limited in pursuing export opportunities in Iraq.
That close cooperation appears to have evaporated. But according to Othman Al-Absi, the Australian Trade Agency on the ground in Jordan was well aware of the links between ALIA and the AWB right from the beginning.
The thick plottings. Tom Cook's actually in Amman with ALIA. We attempted to contact Ayman Ayash, the former Austrade representative in Jordan, but he didn't return our calls. Some of our written questions to DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Canberra, remain unanswered. Late this afternoon, officers from the Coal Royal Commission into the Oil for Food scandal came here to the SBS studios and subpoenaed Tom's interview. Much excitement. The inquiry gets underway again in Sydney tomorrow.